Did turn on the,
I think he
You
did.
did.
did he?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi, everybody watching. We'll be watching after we've done it. Okay, good evening, everybody. I thought, since we're going to be journeying tonight to the Sea of Galilee, I thought it would be nice if we opened with this reciting the words of this hymn. And I thought what we do, there are 3 verses. We know this. It's a hymn very familiar, especially to people in the military or associated with the military.
It's a Navy hymn.
It was called the Navy hymn, but there's an Air Force hymn. They've adapted these verses to many Marine. Yeah, they've done it everywhere. But what I'd like to do is, I guess we'll start. The men will read the first verse, then the ladies will read the second verse, and all together we'll read the third verse. So the men will be the Father, the ladies will be the Savior, and all together we'll do the Holy Spirit. So guys, why don't we start, okay? Eternal Father, strong to save, whose arm does bind the restless wave, who bids the mighty ocean deep its own appointed limits keep. Oh, hear us when we cry to Thee for those in peril on the sea. Ladies?
O Savior, whose almighty word the winds and waves submissive heard, who walked upon the foaming deep, and calm amid the rage did sleep. O hear us when we cry to Thee for those in peril on the sea.
Everyone. O Holy Spirit, who did brood
upon the waters
dark and rude, and bid their angry tumult cease, and give for wild confusion peace. O hear us when we cry to Thee for those in peril on the sea. I have sung this song at many funerals for service people, Navy and otherwise, and it's always a very moving song. It means something special, not just to people serving the military, but to anyone who has had to live with and confront the power of nature. And I don't, you may recall, some of you, that on John F. Kennedy's desk was a little plaque that said, "Dear Lord," I try to remember it, do it correctly. "Dear Lord, thy seed is so great, and my boat is so small." And it's a very powerful image. And the exciting thing about what we're going to learn tonight, talk about, is not too many years ago, they dug up, they found an actual first century boat by the Sea of Galilee. And now they have it on display. And it really helps you to understand tiny little boats. I mean, they weren't big at all. And of course, they were put together. They weren't put together like the Roman boats were by any means. They were kind of stuck together and hung together with bitumen. So, you can imagine being in that little boat and just being in the midst of a squall. We're going to talk a little bit about those things in just a few minutes. But our theme tonight is Jesus stilling the storm. It is Jesus' ministry and work with his disciples on the Sea of Galilee, and the importance of the Sea of Galilee to that region. So our foundation tonight, and we'll be delving into that a little bit later, but our foundation, as you'll see coming up in the middle of the page there, is Mark 4:35-41. Jesus stills the storm. Who would like to read that passage tonight? Thank you, Kathy. Yes.
On that day, when evening had come, he said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them in the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great gale arose, and the waves beat into the boat, so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?"
We're going to explore this passage after we watch the video and talk about some of this and some of the other passages we'll be looking at. But I had a question for you to put in your heart and think about. For the disciples in the boat, which was scarier, the storm or the calm? Think about that. Which was the truly most frightening thing? And I think there's an argument to be made either way, but I think there actually might be an argument for the calm. Because you're going, what is this? What is this? So, we're going to talk a little bit about, we're going to take a look at the geography over here. And at the, can everybody kind of see it? It's not, it's not a real good view from way back there. But that wouldn't matter, because here obviously is the Sea of Galilee, the lowest lowest sea level freshwater body in the world. What our text points out, or what Hamilton points out, is that, and how many have been there? Who's been to that there are hills and mountains, as you see, on the east side of the Sea of Galilee, which acts as to one degree, acts as a block for the desert winds coming in from the east, but also because they're valleys and rifts, it acts as a funnel as well, so that the wind can come in, the weather can come through, the wind can come in one of these little, like there's a rift right there, go through there and come out, and you have a tremendous squall, unimaginably strong that happened. And this happens down to this day on the Sea of Galilee. Anybody eat tilapia? Is that how you pronounce it, tilapia? I think that's the fish that's in the Sea of Galilee, basically. This tilapia. So when you eat tilapia, you're eating what they call Peter's fish. So you're eating there. But it's not. I mean, considering that they did not have modern fishing technology back then, You did not catch a lot of fish working in a day. And of course, it was always better to do it at night because of the heat. And also because you could, being able to see, it was easier to see, believe it or not, it was easier to see what was going on with the moonlight, and it was sometimes the sunlight was too strong to reflect to see, but they preferred to fish at night, and they would work all night. They would work all night, and so that's a part of the story as well, as we look at the story tonight. So one of the questions in the study is, why might fishing have been so important during the time of Christ? Why would that be the case, that fishing as a source of food would have been so important? Why?
It's not an area that they would have farming for farm animals. So that
They did, to a degree, right? They did have farm animals. They had goats. They had meat sources. They had goats. But according to the book, Adam Hamilton, first of all, it was a lot. You didn't have enough of those farm animals to feed the whole population. And secondly, a lot of those were used for religious and ceremonial purposes. But the fish was the everyday food. The everyday food of the people. It was what they ate every day. It was like hamburgers to us, I guess, or whatever. But we eat every day. Why would it serve so well as everyday food, would you think? How did they prepare it? What did they do? They salted it and dried it, which meant they had they could keep it for a long period of time. In an age when they didn't have refrigeration, pretty much they had salt. They smoked it, salted it, and so they were able to have it all the time. So it was an ordinary thing. It was high in protein. So it was an ordinary thing for people to eat every day. And there was, I think they said, 230 boats or so plying the Sea of Galilee during this time. About 230 boats. They even were able to get a count. Yeah, the records were kept. I don't know by whom, but the records were kept. So about 230 boats would ply the Sea of Galilee at any one time fishing. So, and of course they would be fishing day and night. They'd be fishing day and night. And a lot of the operations were family operations. You had to have a number of people in a crew to work it. These little 24-foot boats, and you had to have a number of people on the crew. Another reason they fished at night, because the fish could see the nets. They could see the nets. But at night, they couldn't see the nets. So they would get a better haul at night. During the day, they dodged the nets. But at night, they would catch more fish. So that's one of the reasons they like to fish at night. So let's go ahead and look at the video now and see what Adam Hamilton wants to show us tonight about the Sea of Galilee. And then we'll come back and talk a little bit about the video. You might make some mental notes during the video about things that interest you or things you might see. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions beforehand. What will you notice? Notice about the shoreline. Notice about the vegetation. Notice about the water itself. Take a look at those things as he presents this to us tonight. So we'll be looking now at the presentation. Can you see? You need to
Would you move that one?
What's that? Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry. What happened? For calming the storm. Thank you. Everybody hear it okay?
I love to go to the lake or the ocean. Somehow I feel the presence of God when I'm near the water. And I suspect that was true for Jesus, that when we read the Gospels, we find so many of the episodes in the life of Jesus occurred on water. on a particular body of water on the Sea of Galilee. And in today's session, I'd like to take you there and show you the Sea of Galilee, and we'll reflect together on some of the stories that take place in the ministry and life of Jesus on that body of water. I suspect that Jesus had that same love for the water in part because when he left his hometown after being rejected in Nazareth, he made the journey to the Sea of Galilee, and there he set up his new home, his home for the next 3 years of his public ministry, in a lakeside town called the town of Capernaum, right there on the seashore. Several years ago, I had an opportunity to walk along the northern coast of the Sea of Galilee by myself, backpack with me, and as I was doing that, I just sensed this connection Jesus must have felt. And then I stopped at a certain place near Capernaum, and I went back and I took a picture of the mountains, Mount Arbel in particular, and the sun setting over it from the Sea of Galilee. You used to see this photo here. And I suspect that Jesus felt what I felt that day. In fact, I wonder if he didn't see the same sunset here in this place, if he didn't feel that same connection with God in the water. Now I want to tell you a little bit more about the Sea of Galilee. On this map, you can see where the Sea of Galilee is located, in the north of the Holy Land. The lake actually went by several names in the time of Jesus. It was called the Lake of Tiberias, so named to honor the emperor who ruled in Rome at the time. It was also called Gennesaret, a name which we think means heart, and which likely describes the shape of the lake, as you can see in this satellite image. But most often in the Gospels, it is simply known as the Sea of Galilee. With this bit of background, we turn to the Gospels. And in Mark 1:16, we read, "As Jesus passed along the Sea of Galilee, he saw Simon and his brother Andrew casting a net into the sea, for they were fishermen." This is an everyday scene along the Sea of Galilee. You'll constantly see, especially in the evening, men who are going out of the water in their boats, casting their nets to go fishing, just as the disciples did in Jesus' day. The wealthier fishermen have drag nets and boats and whole crews of people, and they go out on the water and they would drag for fish with their nets, and they would bring them to shore, usually at night. And we see that in Mark chapter 1, verse 19, where we read, "As he went a little further, he saw James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John, who were in their boat mending the nets. Immediately he called them, and they left their father Zebedee in the boat with the hired men and followed him." James and John were working with their father and the hired men in the boats as they were mending their drag nets, which tells us that Peter and Andrew were probably less fluent disciples. The sons of Zebedee, James and John, were probably more fluent. They had a team of hired men, boats, and drag nets in which they fished differently. And even to this day, again on the Sea of Galilee, you can watch and see as men are dragging their nets at night, fishing for the tilapia and the other fish on the Sea of Galilee. And what I'd like to do is I'd like to actually take you onto a small fishing boat, a boat that we've managed to commandeer for a few hours. And it would seat about 12 people. It's probably about the size of the boats that Jesus was in. His might have been a little larger. And as it's turning out, we're actually moving into a time of storm. There's some rain and clouds and wind that's coming up. And so we're going to have a chance to step out of that little boat. And we're going to be joined by Yairi, who is a fisherman. He's been fishing here in this lake for 30 years. And he's going to help us understand a little bit more about what Jesus' disciples might have been like. So let's embark on the small fishing boat here at the Sea of Galilee. So we're in a small fishing boat on the Sea of Galilee, and it's a stormy day. It's pouring down rain, the winds are blowing. This boat would have seated about 12 people, 13 people, and so this is about the size of the boat that Jesus would have been on when he crossed the Sea of Galilee. Now, he did this frequently, and as he did, it took about 2 hours to cross the sea. When he and the disciples went, often they went at night. The fishermen actually still fish at night on the Sea of Galilee. Not during the daytime, they fish at night. And as they would have crossed this lake one evening, Mark tells us, we read these words. This is Mark chapter 4. That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, "Let us go over to the other side." Now, the Jordan River is an invisible line. It comes in at the north end of the Sea of Galilee. It exits at the south end, and that determines when you cross over, you're crossing over that invisible line of the Jordan River. So they were to cross over. "Let us go over," he said, to the other side. And leaving the crowds behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. And there were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, "Teacher, don't you care if we drown?" He got up, he rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, "Quiet, be still." And the wind died down, and it was completely calm. And he said to his disciples, "Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith?" They were terrified and asked each other, "Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." And in that moment, Jesus demonstrated this truth, that he was Lord over the forces of the deep. He was Lord over the forces of the wind and the rains. He was Lord of all creation. This is what he showed in that moment when he calmed the wind and the waves. And in some ways, taking us back to that moment Moses parted the waters of the Red Sea, Jesus had that power to be able to calm the forces of nature. And the disciples realized that they were not dealing with an ordinary man. So here I am with Yahiri, who is a fisherman. He's been a fisherman for 30 years. His father was a fisherman before him in Austria, and they immigrated here to Israel. And he fishes every night. Tell me, what are fishermen like?
Fishermen are good men, they are a good friend, they are strong people, you can trust them.
What do you love about fishing? What do you love about your job?
What I like my job is every day is a new day. Every day you don't know what you're going to catch, and you never give up. To see the sea, to see the sun, to see the moon, to see the storm, to see the fish inside the net. Wow.
That's a joy.
Excited, yeah. And you see this leg and you fall in love.
It's captivating, isn't
It's
it?
never boring. You never want to go, you want to stay with the leg. But I think Jesus was a good fisherman. And sometimes you need to know the exactly hour when the fish going out and come together, and you know where is the fish. So I think he was a very good fisherman, Jesus.
So there you have it. We've done a little fishing out here. We've been rained on and winds and waves, and now the sun's breaking out, and we've learned something about how fishermen love the water and how Jesus must have been a fisherman who loved this place. It just captivates your heart when you're out here on the water. You look around, and every time you see it, every time the different time of day, different seasons, it looks different, and every time it's just the most beautiful place. It's easy to understand why Jesus loved the Sea of Galilee. In your study, you'll continue to explore these great stories that happened on the Sea of Galilee. But I'd like to just remind you that when the disciples were there and Jesus was walking on the water to them, and then he calmed the winds and the waves, they asked a question that was really important. Who is this who calms the winds and the waves? And what they remembered was, in the Hebrew Bible, the only one who could calm the winds and the waves, the only one who controlled the storms and the seas, was God himself. And they no doubt remembered how God's Spirit hovered over the face of the deep when the earth was created. How it was that Moses led the children of Israel to walk through the Red Sea as though it were dry land because God parted the waters. They undoubtedly remembered and reflected on the fact as they saw Jesus calming the winds and the waves that the psalmist in Psalm 89:9 speaks of the one who calms the seas and the storms. They remembered how Jonah was in the water. God stirred up the water in order to move this reluctant prophet to go and do what God had asked him. And when he was thrown into the water was calmed, and then God delivered him through the mouth of the giant fish. And here was Jesus calming the winds and the waves. Who indeed is this who calms the winds and the waves? I'd like to invite you to pray with me as we remember that Jesus is the one who calms the storms in our own lives. Let's pray. Oh God, we give you thanks and praise that in the midst of the storms of life, you still are God. And that Jesus still plays the role he did on the sea that day in our own lives. And we pray, oh Lord, that you would calm the wind and the waves when we feel like we're in danger of drowning. That you would deliver us, that you would walk with us, that we would sense that as long as you're in our boat, as long as you're in our boat, we're safe and secure from all harms. Thank you, O Lord, for walking with us in the boat in our lives through the storms. In your holy name, amen.
Okay. Here. So, most of the walk again. I'm not technically very good with so did you, what response, insights, did you notice anything about the lake? Did anything strike you as interesting about the lake or the boat? Or anything that you just saw? Did you get any impressions from it?
Changed a lot.
What?
It changed a lot.
Good, very good, very good, yeah. It changed a lot, which of course is pretty typical with larger bodies of water. It's amazing how quickly, of course, in this one, as it said in the geography, you're surrounded by mountainous area, and you've got a flatter area on the west side, and it's got a very interesting topography, yes?
It's just still very natural.
Good. Yes, yes, yes. You don't see a lot of vacation homes sitting over there, do you?
No.
It's extremely natural still. And I imagine that's because it's a protected park area, I would think. I'm not sure if that's the case, but I'm sure it's a protected area. What did you notice about the vegetation, the shoreline? What did you notice about it? What did you not see that you might see beside other bodies of water? Trees? Didn't see hardly any trees at all, did you?
Beach.
Well, you didn't see any sand. You didn't see beach. That's correct. What's that?
No wharfs or piers.
No, yeah. I mean, pretty much what you saw is what it would have looked like in Christ's time. There's no, it's what it would have looked like. So when you know it looked like that, that kind of helps you understand the stories. Why would Jesus have needed to step out into the boat in order to speak to this crowd of people? Well, there was no beach. I mean, there was just, this rough shoreline with rocky, rough shoreline and water, and there was really no place for people to stand. There was no beach for them to be on. So it was, as you see it, it kind of can bring to life some of those stories. And the water itself, what did you notice about the water? Anything interesting about the water? What?
It was choppy.
The water is constantly moving. There are still lakes. The Sea of Galilee is not a still lake. It's large enough, and because it feeds out into the Jordan, it is constantly moving. The water is constantly moving in it one way or the other, which is why the calm was such a miracle for them. Because the Sea of Galilee is not calm. It's not mirror still, like you've seen in some lakes, where even larger lakes, where if there's no wind, there's no anything, it can just be like glass. That's not the Sea of Galilee. It's constantly moving. So the very fact that it was dead calm and the sea was quote unquote still, that would have been even more impressive for them who were in the boat with him that day. So yeah, the water is constantly moving. Let's think about water as a symbol. Water has a great deal of meaning for us scientifically, symbolically, culturally. In human culture, what does water represent? Life. Creation. Just about every pagan mythology has water somewhere in it as how the world or the universe was made. I mean, go back into I studied, world religions, and we went back into Eastern religions and then pagan religions in antiquity, and all of them had something involving water in it for the beginning of the world, the beginning of creation. So water is foundational to life, to creation, in human culture and pagan mythology. What did water represent in the Jewish religion? Can you name some significant stories from Hebrew scriptures that involved water? In fact, where water was almost a character in the story.
Parting of the Red Sea.
What? Parting of the Red Sea. Fantastic. What's that?
The flood.
The flood. The flood story. Absolutely. Any others?
Jonah and the whale.
Jonah the whale. Very good. The Nineveh story. Yeah, very, very good. Can you think of others?
Well, there's ritual bathing.
Yeah, the evolution. The evolution, absolutely. Yeah, we talked about that. The evolution. Yeah. Can you think of other places where water had a significance in the Old Testament or in the Hebrew Scriptures?
Joshua crossing the Jordan.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Joshua they crossed the Jordan to go into the Promised Land. What else?
When the Israelites were in the desert for 40 years, once Moses spoke to the rock and water came out.
Yes.
And Paul later talked about how that represented Christ being there among the people
people.
Yes. You'll also recall that one of the reasons that Moses was not allowed to cross over with the people into the promised land was because he had caused water to come from a rock at the request of the people without God's permission to do so. That's what the story says, that he just went ahead and did it. And so we don't know the circumstances of that, but accordingly, Moses was not allowed to, because he misused the gift of water, I guess you could say it that way. Any other stories you can think about?
Moses came out of the water.
Moses came out of the water. Outstanding. In the bulrush. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, great. Good thinking. Moses came out of the water. Very, very good. Can you think of any others? The prophets were always involved. Some of the prophets like Amos and others were involved in the water in some way. You usually see water involved in, and certainly in Psalms. Water is a significant symbol in Psalms of all kinds of different things. We won't go into all of those scriptures, but you see water everywhere. Now in Christianity, what does water represent? What? Baptism. What else? What else? It represents other things. Cleansing. Good. Cleansing. Repentance. What else? Huh?
The water in the well.
Good. The well. That's good for the Old Testament too. The symbol of the well is an extremely. What was the well in the Old Testament? What was it? It was a gathering place. It was a community place where people came together. I mean, who was it that met his wife at the well? It was Jacob, wasn't it? I mean, Joseph. No, who was it? It was Jacob. Jacob met his wife at the well, you know? And the well was it's kind of like, Studio 54, whatever it was, the well. Well was where he went to meet people. So the well, and then the well, very good, the well in the New Testament. What a great story that is. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was thinking of Jesus at the well in Sychar in Samaria, and
Yes.
talking to the woman at
Yes.
the well.
Yes.
And he said, if you knew who I was, you'd ask me, and I would give you living water.
Living water.
So the water represented life.
And what was living water? Living water was moving water, or water that moves you. So here is the spiritual water that will move you into a new life, into a new way, and that's what was the case with the Samaritan woman who went forth to witness of this person that came. But that's an incredibly complex story as well, but a really good one. So that it's all kind of symbolism of these things that are in the book. And of course, we think of the Lord as my shepherd. He teaches me to lie down beside. Why is it important in the 23rd Psalm that the water is still? You might know the answer to that. What? Sheep are afraid of moving water. Sheep will not lie down beside moving water. They will not. That's what I read. I don't know much about sheep, so if anybody knows, let me know. But according to what I read, sheep are not comfortable, but if the water's calm, they'll lay down beside it. So I read somewhere it says sheep won't drink from moving water. I imagine if they're thirsty enough, they'll drink from anything. Yeah, go ahead.
I say there are several instances of where Jesus used water in healing.
Yes, very good. Absolutely. And I forgot to mention also the miracle of Cana. When the water of the sacred water was turned into, and this was the water of purification, was turned into celebration. Religion became faith. Purification became celebration. That's a great first miracle, by the way. An amazing first miracle. So water is extremely significant. And then, of course, we have the stories of the Sea of Galilee. And that's what we're looking at tonight. So we're going to do our Bible study, little Bible study here. And I want us to do, we need a narrator A, we need Jesus B, and Peter C, as we do this text. So who would like to be the narrator?
Be the narrator.
Thank you, Tom. Who would like to be Jesus? Thank you, Kathy. Who would like to be Peter? Thank you, good. Yes, go ahead. Okay, so let's begin with the narrative.
Once while Jesus was standing beside the lake of Gennesaret,
Gennesaret, yeah.
and the crowd was pressing in on him to hear the word of God, he saw two boats there at the shore of the lake. The fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. He got into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, and asked him to put out a little way from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon,
Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch.
Simon answered,
Master, we have worked all night long, but have caught nothing. Yet if you say so, I will let down the nets.
when they had done this, they caught so many fish that their nets were beginning to break. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. When Simon Peter saw it, he fell down at Jesus' knee, saying,
Go away from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man.
For he and all who were with him were amazed at the catch of fish they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. Then Jesus said to Simon,
Do not be afraid. From now on, you will be catching people.
when they had brought their boats to shore, they left everything and followed him.
They left everything and followed him. So let's take a little bit, you can look at that story as I ask these questions. The questions are on the other side, but you can just look at the story to answer the questions that I shared with you. So let's talk a little bit about Simon's reaction to Jesus' request to put the boat out. Hey, he doesn't even say please. He makes a command. It's the voice of command. Put the boat out. So how do you think Simon reacted to this? What do you hear as you hear the voice of Simon answering Jesus? What do you hear?
He really didn't want to do it. He was tired.
Yeah. Why didn't he not want to?
Well, they'd already been fishing all night.
He was exhausted. Yeah. I mean, he was exhausted. Yeah.
And he was the experienced fisherman. And
Yeah.
he knew the lake, and that it probably was not a good idea.
But furthermore, why couldn't he ask somebody else? I mean, why did it have to be Simon? He didn't say, well, one of you do this, did he? He didn't say, well, one of you please do this. He just looked at someone and said, put it out here. Let's go. Put it out there. And so in Simon's reaction, we hear a little bit of hesitation, a little bit of frustration. We have, Master, we've worked all night long, but have caught nothing. In other words, it's not that, yes, go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking of what we've learned from Adam, and that is that fishermen aren't as successful during the daytime.
Correct.
The fish see the nets. So that's another reason Peter would have said, come on.
Yeah. Well, I even think, the fact is that they're putting out a little bit for him to speak. And Peter's going, well, we've been fishing all night. And then he says, okay, I'll do this, but listen to the sound of his voice. Yet if you say so. In other words, is there a way you could just not say so here? You ever, and I can hear that. Is there a way that it's, can you not? And some of us might go, oh, it's okay, Peter, don't worry about it. I'll get somebody else. Jesus doesn't say that, does he? He just stands there waiting for him to do it. But if you say so, I will let down the nets. He had finished, I'm sorry, I apologize. He had finished speaking to the crowd. And so now, he puts them out. And, but I'll let him down. If you tell me to, I'll let him down. Okay, so we see that reaction. Simon's a little bit on the grumpy side, I imagine. He's tired. The last thing he really wants to do is, we haven't had much luck, and now it's daytime when the fish can see the nets. Why do you think Simon, when the miracle happens, why do you think Simon refers to himself as a sinful man? And why does he want Jesus to leave him? Yes, go ahead.
Does he doubt Jesus?
Good, 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 good. That's definitely, he's not ready for this. He is not mentally, emotionally prepared for this. He sees himself, and very good. Any other answers to that? Thank you. Any others? Yes, go ahead.
Well, in the Old Testament, it was, you were supposed to see the face of God.
Very good. Very good.
So he was thinking Jesus was, that's who God would come.
Yeah. I mean, we see often in the Old Testament, over and over, people, when they come in confrontation with God in some way, some form, not wanting to be around Him, wanting to be somewhere else, not wanting to be in the presence of that. It's frightening. It's frightening to see that happen. I mean, why would that be frightening to Simon or to anyone to see that? What's Simon thinking about? Why does Simon, remember now, Simon doesn't know Jesus yet. He knows who he might be, according to John, but he really doesn't know. Think about how they viewed the Messiah back then.
In the Jewish faith, I mean, it was all very rules regulated.
Very much so. Yeah.
Simon is a fisherman, I imagine, was kind of a rough person.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he didn't keep all of those rules and regulations. And Jesus, even if they didn't recognize him as the Son of God at that point in time, he was a rabbi.
He was a rabbi, yes.
And so,
yeah.
hey, I'm not a good person,
And they really did expect the rabbi to, they behaved differently in front of a rabbi than they would in front of somebody else. It called for a totally different kind of behavior. You were to be honored. I mean, he's out there in his fishing clothes, maybe without a shirt, who knows, but he's out there in his fishing, clothes out there. They've been mending the nets. And he's probably dirty, he's probably filthy, he had a bathe, probably filthy, And suddenly he realizes that and secondly, they didn't see the Messiah, remember, as a passive, as a loving, as a sacrificing. The Messiah was what?
Well, somebody who's going to conquer.
Yes.
And I think the idea too, it occurred to me as I read it, that go away because I'm a sinful man. It's almost the recognition that this is not a normal person. This is something beyond. And I don't want to be, I wasn't leading anybody on. I know I'm not worthy and this sort of stuff.
Yes.
I mean, it's hedging your bets, but it's...
Yeah. And maybe even so, that Simon realized that Jesus, who's able to do this, probably knew exactly what he was thinking rather than what he was saying. And Lord knows what he was thinking, right? I mean, he might have been pretty frustrated. So he's thinking, this guy is a phony. This guy, he's thinking things. And suddenly he realized that Jesus probably knows what he's thinking too. Yeah, go ahead.
I was thinking of what C.S. Lewis said in describing Aslan in the Chronicles of Narnia. He said, he's not a tame lion.
Right.
Yeah. We can think of Jesus, I appreciate this viewpoint because we can come to think of Jesus as being all love and, caring, compassionate, kind, and yet he's not a tame lion. He cannot be put in a box. He cannot control.
Oh yeah, yes.
He can create suddenly
Yeah.
boatloads of fish.
Yes.
So I think it would be frightening to be around a person like that. And I thought of the demoniac that they bumped into and how the demons went into the 2,000 pigs and they all died. And the people in the village said, go away.
Go away. We're not,
They were frightened by that power.
Well, and it's interesting that on the lake, we're going to look at the next passage in a few minutes, when they think he's a ghost coming across at them. I mean, they were, and fishermen, are fisher people, are they superstitious?
yeah.
They are incredibly superstitious. I mean, super superstitious. They were then, they are now. People that make a living on the water, they can be pretty superstitious. So, I mean, they were Yeah, this was breaking the boundaries. Go ahead.
I was just thinking about, I grew up in Alabama, and I can remember Martin Luther King coming to our city, and my folks were like, "We really don't want him to come."
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's a good man,
But-
but there's going to be trouble.
Could be trouble.
And I
it's
can
gonna
see
be
the
trouble.
same kind of thing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, and there was going to be trouble, wasn't there? I mean, yeah, good point, very good point.
I'm always sort of amazed by the, obviously Simon is gathering insights, he's aware. And yet he goes on and becomes a disciple and keeps forgetting what he learned. I mean,
I know.
when they always, I mean, he forgets that fear, that awe in things.
I think in the initial part, his following Jesus was more out of obligation and thanksgiving, because what gift had Jesus given Simon and the family? What, like wealth. That was more than just, I mean, if you saw how little they got out fishing overnight, they didn't get very many fish. That was overwhelming wealth for them. I mean, they really did well. Jesus, and here we go back to the theme of how Jesus multiplies gifts. How he, not only does he give, but he gives over abundantly. Over, what's the word? Shaken down, pressed. You more than a bushel. You get overabundance. So here Jesus had given to this family, of this fishing family, abundantly. And so, maybe Simon feels an obligation to go. Who knows? James and John, really not really realizing. Yeah, Jesus said you're going to be fishing for men, but maybe they just kind of, who knows how they reacted to that. I wonder what that means. So we don't know. We really don't know. We know that initially, the initial walk, they had not become yet apostles. They were not named apostles yet. They had to go through a period of their own understanding of what it meant to walk with Jesus before they became formally apostles. So this is the initial stages of meeting him, So it's really interesting to think about these things. There's a lot going on in these stories. Okay, let's turn back one more time now before we go to the next section to the first passage that we read. The first passage, and we'll read it again. Mark 4, the stilling of the storm. We'll talk a little bit about that. And I'll read that for you. On that day, when evening had come, Jesus said to them, "Let us go across to the other side." And leaving the crowd behind, they took him with them to the boat, just as he was. Other boats were with him. A great gale arose. The waves beat into the boat so that the boat was already being swamped. But he was in the stern, asleep on the cushion. And they woke him up and said to him, "Teacher, do you not care that we are perishing?" He woke up and rebuked the wind and said to the sea, "Peace, be still." Then the wind ceased, and there was a dead calm. And never happened, remember, on the sea. A dead calm. He said to them, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith?" And they were filled with great awe and said to one another, "Who then is this, that even the wind and the sea obey him?" Very powerful story. Very powerful story. These storms are there. I once heard a biblical professor, a New Testament scholar, say that the language in the Greek of this storm is somewhat metaphysical. That, in other words, this was more than just your ordinary storm. That this was, if anything, almost a cosmic event. That it was like the intent being destruction. The feeling was the intent being destruction. That the language in the Greek implies something more going on than just your ordinary squall. Okay? That it was a huge, huge storm. Something that the stilling of it would have been a metaphysical, a cosmic event against the powers of darkness, against the powers of evil. I once heard a professor say that. Now, I haven't done a word study in Greek of that particular passage, but that's what the professor said. And I can tell you, I lived myself beside the Gulf, and Gulf of Mexico when I was in Clearwater. We actually, for my last year there, lived on the water itself. We lived in a high-rise. But then I had a friend who had about a 35-foot boat, nice boat. He was wealthy, And we would go out on his boat. And it was a 35-foot boat, modern boat, had all the technology you could imagine. He loved gadgets, so he had everything. And I mean, a storm would come, and it was frightening, because you can get in the Gulf easily 10-foot, 12-foot waves. I mean, that can just happen just like that. It can happen quickly. Suddenly, you're like this. And I remember, tell a quick anecdote. His wife's father, had come down from Canada. He must have been about 83, 84. Had come down from Canada and was on the boat with us. And we'd been trying to fish in this, small craft warnings were out, and we'd been trying to fish in this stuff, right? Going like this, right? Well, he and I were both on the bow of the boat, and it was going like this, and I look over, and over he is going. He is being tossed off. I reach over, grab him by the back of his pants. He's hanging over, and I pull him back up over, right? And this 84-year-old guy turns around, looks at me, and goes, "Best catch of the day." True story. True story. Best catch of the day. Yeah, I agree, that was the best catch of the day. So it is really frightening to be out on the water in any craft, especially a small one, in the midst of a storm, the darkness, the darkness. And it can just be totally terrifying. They didn't have any technology, they didn't have any help, they were just out there, okay? Our Adam Hamilton wanted us to think about, the storms. What storm kind of represents what? He asked the question, what storms do you see today in today's world? What storms do you see in the lives of other people? Can you name some of storms that we're conscious of in the world or in the lives of other people?
Well, the refugee situation.
Good, the refugee situation, perfect example of that. Perfect example. Addiction, another great example, yeah.
Loss of jobs.
Yeah. Homelessness, absolutely.
Mental and physical illness.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we're surrounded by storms, and sometimes we find ourselves in these storms ourselves. I deal with chronic illness. It's a storm. It's a storm, let me assure you. I mean, it's one you wish would just go away, but it just doesn't. Any others that you want to name?
Gun violence.
What's that?
Gun violence.
Gun violence. Violence, just violence and abuse. Violence and abuse. I mean, wow, what it does to people's lives. In fact, it's good in the image of the storm to think about, post-traumatic syndrome. Just because the storm ends doesn't mean that you've recovered from it. Just the memory of the storm is enough to continue the storm in your life, to continue. We think about, our veterans who come back from war. They never leave the storm. It's always with them. It's always, Desert Storm, as they call it, doesn't go away just because you get out of the desert. It's still there. So we think about that. And what does it mean for us? What does it mean for us to say, as Christians, that Jesus has dominion over these storms? What does that mean to say that Jesus has dominion over these storms? How can we say that? But we are the church. Yes, go ahead, Al.
He's our rock.
He's our rock. Very good. What else? Yes, go ahead.
Well, I think too that you're not alone in your boat. There's no promise that everything's going to come to a standstill just because you got Jesus in your boat. But you're not alone.
John, very good. That the dominion idea is, I think also, the storm is, nothing that happens to you is greater than Jesus. Nothing is greater to you than God, greater than God. So no matter what you may face, God is still greater than that. Okay? Yes, go ahead.
I also think every storm anyone goes through is also a trial from God, and it can also help that person
Yes.
grow spiritually.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I totally agree with that. Yes. I mean, the storms sometimes are, we can benefit from it. We can gain from it. Gain faith because we know God's with us. Gain experience in that, helping others calm their storms, you know. Sometimes that makes what's worth the terrible things we go through, or we see other people go through, makes it worth it in that it can help somebody else. You know, I think of the book Unbroken. You know, an incredible book. If you've seen the movie, I don't know if you've seen the movie or not, but it's about the runner who is taken, goes into the war and is lost at sea, and then is picked up by the Japanese, and it's just an amazing story. If you ever get a chance to read it, it's incredible. And do read it. It's much better than the movie. Just read the book. But it's an amazing, amazing book. And it's a story about it. It's a story about literal storms on the water and how this amazing person finds Christ and emerges on the other side out of the storm, and then helps others, young people, to go through their storm. It's a great story. How do we make sense when those storms don't go away? How do we make sense of our faith? How do we make sense of the ongoing storms in our lives? How do we do that? Are there ways that we do that? Let's look just at the world in general. How do people deal well or not so well with storms in their lives? What do we?
One way is to ignore it. That isn't one of the better ones.
Good. Ignore it. Very good. It's not. Denial is certainly not,
Just a river.
denial is a river in Africa. But yeah, exactly. Denial is one way to ignore it, to try to say, I'm not in a storm. I'm not in it. And of course, what happens with that?
Usually capsize.
It's going to come out. It's going to come out, I think sometimes that misappropriated faith can cause that as well. Well, everything's fine, everything's fine. I have faith that everything's going to be fine. But then there's a lot of people who, once they realize everything's not fine, may lose faith. And that's really not what faith is. Is faith about making everything fine? No, it's not. Faith is about, well, you tell me what it's about. If it's not about making everything fine, what's it about?
Like Liz said, God's in our boat.
God's in our boat.
All the learning experiences that are going to come from all those bad things that happen to us.
It's not that faith is not a solution to our problems. Faith is a different type of solution altogether that transcends our problems. Faith is transcendent. Faith is about the kingdom of God, not about the world in the sense of that it gives us the other focus in our lives. I mean, sure, we suffer through it, but there's always then the sense of purpose of, okay, I still have my purpose. Faith is about your purpose in life, and it's about, okay, what am I learning? Or even going through this, my purpose still is there. God is still there, and I'm still being used for this purpose. So it's kind of a transcendent way of viewing life. I mean, it is a transcendent way of viewing life. I'm probably not explaining myself too well. And how do we know? How do we know that God still cares for us, even when the storms don't go away? How do we know? Go ahead.
Like what you said earlier, if you ignore the storm at first, and then after ignoring it, it still persists and still happens. I think the other step is to realize you're in a storm and tell God you realize you're in a storm and you don't know what to do.
Yes.
And maybe He just wants you to realize it, that something's wrong somewhere. And maybe when you get that, you realize it, then everything will fall in place.
Yeah, very good. Yes, I think coming to acceptance, realization and acceptance can lead toward resolution, can lead toward, discovering the purpose that's going on. But very good. So going back, how do we know God still cares for us when the storms don't go away? How do we know?
Well, from the hundreds of stories from God's Word where He proves Himself faithful, but also looking back on my own life and in the lives of those I've come to know and how God has been faithful to them and to me. So it may appear at the moment that God's not around and I'm going through some kind of extreme difficulty, but I know from past experience in my life and the lives of others that God's still there.
And where do we find and hear God in those times? Where?
Small, still voice.
From where? Where is the small, still voice?
I would say from prayer and meditation.
And where else?
People.
Yes.
People visiting or hearing.
Yeah. Yes, I mean from people who minister to us. If we're open to being ministered. That's why the church, you cannot live out the Christian life alone. It requires the church because it is where not only is it where we hear voices, the voice of God speaking to us in our times of need, but where we get the opportunity to speak the voice of God to others in their time. Right? In their time of need. Of course. So that it gives that we have opportunity after opportunity. Tonight we lifted people up in prayer, right? Didn't we? Well, there you go. That's the voice of God, you know? To hear, and when someone says, I prayed for you, how do you feel about that when someone says, I prayed for you? How does that make you feel?
I like it.
You bet. You bet. Any other, you bet. It's a wonderful thing. What does that communicate to someone?
Love.
Love. Simple love, you know. I prayed for you is the same as saying I love you. But it's love on a higher plane. You know, I love you, and for your sake, I prayed for you. That's a very powerful thing. And I'll tell you, and I see it on the forums, the public forums on the internet. Even hardcore atheists will be happy to hear someone say, I prayed for you. They will be happy to hear that. Even though they'll say, I don't believe, thank you for saying that. Thank you. Because I know you're thinking about it, you know. So it's a very powerful statement. Okay, let's look at, in the time left, let's look at the last passage here. We'll just read through it real quick. It's Matthew 14, 22 through 23. Jesus walked on the water. Immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go ahead to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. And after he had dismissed the crowds, he went up to the mountain by himself to pray. When evening came, he was there alone, but by this time the boat, battered by the waves, was far from the land, for the wind was against them. And early in the morning he came walking towards them on the lake. But when the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified, saying, "It is a ghost." And they cried out in fear. But immediately Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take heart, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter answered him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." I just realized something. Oh, wow. Sometimes these revelations just hit you. The first thing that Jesus ever did to Peter was command him to put him out on the water. Put the boat out there. Take the boat out a little further. Here's Peter going, command me to go out on the water. That's an exact copy of what now he's asking Jesus to do, to prove that he's Jesus. I just realized that. He said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat, started walking on water, and came towards Jesus. But when he noticed the strong wind, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him, saying to him, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and those in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." So what do we want to do first? Let's list the characters in the story in order as it happens. Okay, like we're making the cast list of this story. Who do we see first?
Disciples.
The disciples. And what's the action? Yeah, he made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead. That idea that he made them. What is that kind of sense do you get from that? That he made them do it.
Maybe they weren't eager.
What's that?
Maybe they weren't eager to do it.
They weren't eager to do it, and he had a purpose, he had an intent. I think you both nailed it right there. They weren't real eager to do that, and he had an intent with telling them to do so, okay? And go ahead to the other side. And who do we see next?
The crowds.
The crowds. And what happens to the crowds? He dismisses the crowds. And then who do we see? And what? And who else? Anybody else? Where is Jesus? What's he doing? What's the action?
Water. He's having went for them to pray.
He's in the mountain, isn't he? And what's he doing? So he needed time alone. He sent them, I think we can imply that he sent them ahead. They didn't want to go, but he just didn't want to be around them. He needed some time alone. He needed that time alone. And we see Jesus do this all the time. He took a retreat. He took a little retreat, a mini retreat, okay? And so evening came, he's there alone, and now what's going on? What's the action? What's happening?
Waves, wind.
The boat is way out there, and the waves are up. It's not a sense of a cosmic storm, but the waves are up, okay? The wind was against them. So that's kind of a normal situation. It's not a tempest, it's the wind's against them. Still, it's night. Yeah, go ahead.
But they have an additional fear because Jesus isn't with them.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. He's not there with them, and now they're in that situation, of, hey, we need some help here. We could founder, right? And so what happens next? What do we see? Here he comes towards them on the lake. So who's the characters that we see next? The disciples, right? And what is their reaction? They think it's a ghost. Superstitious fishermen. Think it's, well, what would you think if you saw somebody walking on the water towards you? You'd be freaking out, right? Wouldn't we all? We'd be going, get the boat going the other way. What is going on here? Get the boat going the other way, right? This is not good. Something is coming at us.
I just realized the time difference here.
What's that?
I just realized the time difference.
Yes.
Because when evening came, he was there alone, and the boat was battered by waves, and he didn't walk out until early the next morning.
Yes.
So the disciples must have been exhausted if they were battling the storm.
Bet they
all
were.
night.
They were totally, yes, good point. They were completely exhausted. Have any of you ever rowed a boat before? Do you know how much energy it takes to row one? It is amazing how much strength it takes to row a boat. And if you're rowing against the wind, holy yeah. I hate just riding my bike against the wind. Can't even imagine rowing against the wind. And so they cry out in fear. Jesus responds how? What does he say? 3 things. Take heart. It is I. Now, the interesting phrase in that whole thing is, it is I. I mean, either Jesus is using perfect English here, but actually, Adam Hamilton says that the Greek, it's an odd Greek, because what it doesn't say, it is I in the Greek, it says, I am. Take heart, I am. And where does I am come from?
Exodus 3.
Exodus 3. This is a burning bush. I am. Yahweh, I am. I am Yahweh's, I am who I am. I am, Jesus says. I exist. And I am means I'm not a ghost. It is, I am a person. I am the one. I am the one you know, Jesus. Take heart. Do not be afraid. Fear not. And he told them before, don't be afraid. So they were used to hearing that. And so Peter's response is just a classic, right? For Peter. What does he go? What does he do?
Prove it.
Prove it. If it is you, what a challenge, right? What a challenge. I mean, they've already seen some amazing things up to this point, but Peter didn't buy it, right? If it is you, command me to come out onto the water. It's an odd request. It's an odd request, isn't it? I mean, I think Peter's superstition just overwhelmed him, and he thinks maybe they're being deceived or something by this. So request me to, I would not have stepped out on that water for any amount of money in the universe. But no, command. You gotta admire Peter's courage. So Jesus goes, come, let's go, come on out. And he starts walking on the water, and he's moving toward Jesus. And of course, what happens? What's the action? You ever seen a cat wants to get outside and suddenly gets outside and goes, I'm outside? Especially an indoor cat. An indoor cat will freak out when he goes outside and goes, I'm not supposed to be here. Right back inside again. They will do that. What am I doing here? I mean, he gets distracted. You know, that question, how can this be? How can this be? I mean, there's a good, what I think will preach a million times, you know. You can preach on that all day about getting distracted. And he cries out, what?
Lord, save me.
Save me, Lord. And immediately, Jesus reaches his hand and catches him and pulls him into the boat. Your little faith pulls him up. Why did you doubt? You have little faith. Peter, you have little faith. Why did you doubt? Here you were walking on the water with me. Everything's going great, and suddenly you just start doubting. Why did Peter doubt? Why?
Because he took his eyes off of Jesus.
Took his eyes off of Jesus? What else? What's another reason? Because he's human. Because we doubt. Because incredible things can happen to us, and we doubt. Well, you know, that was just a coincidence. Nah, that couldn't have been what that was, you know. Just got lucky or something like that, you know. So we doubt. It's just a part of our natures to doubt. Right? It's just to doubt. And that's why, you know, people say, well, if Jesus had come today, it would have been a completely different result. No, it hadn't. They might have hung him quicker. He might not even made 3 years if he came today. Are you kidding me? They'd be after him so bad. I mean, you can't even imagine what it would be. But he wouldn't make it blind.
You thought he would have been shot.
A shot. He wouldn't have made it. Yes.
Well, I love this prayer, if you will. It's just as simple and as honest as it can be. Lord, save me.
Save me. Jesus, take the wheel. That's the song, the old country song, right? Or the country song. Jesus, take the wheel. Save me. And I mean, it's that cry. I was sinking deep in sin, far from the peaceful shore. That's the love lifted me. What a great hymn that is. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking too, it reflects on Jesus' name, which means he saves.
He saves. That's right. Right? Save me. Save me. Just crying out, save me. You know, I mean, how many people have done that? How many times have we done that? Save me, Lord. Save me. And then they got into the boat, and again, what happens? The wind ceases. They're no longer fighting the wind. And now we see who next? Who do we see next?
All those in the boat.
All the disciples, and what are they doing?
Worshiping.
Worshiping him, saying, truly, you are the Son of God. Now remember, at this time, this is Matthew 14, so it's pretty well along in the ministry. But this time, I mean, again, they still really didn't understand what that meant to say, you're the Son of God. They really didn't understand that yet. I don't think he had said to them yet, by the way, the Son of God's going to get crucified. He hadn't said that with them yet. So they're worshiping him, but worshiping him as probably they're still misunderstood the Messiah, what it meant to be the Messiah. They're worshiping him. They're worshiping him because he stilled the water, he saved them, they saw Peter walk on the water, these incredible things they saw they're worshiping for, but they're not yet there for worshiping for why he came. For why he came. Okay, so I thought we're going to close with that story. What I'd like to do in our closing part, we'll leave the rest because it's just a little bit about the book, but our closing prayer, and what I'd like to do in our closing prayer, any thoughts or ideas from anything that you'd like to share before we close tonight about what we've done and what we've looked at as we looked at the Sea of Galilee? Anything you want that you connected to? Did you like his lesson? Yes. I remind you again, be sure to read the book, because the book goes a lot longer than the lesson does. And the book gets into more detail than we ever could. So if you don't have a book, take one with you. And if you don't have it, if you never done a letter, I'll get you one, but I think we have some over there. Read the book. Okay. So I thought we would just say the sentence there down at the bottom. We'll say that together, and then we'll say together the Lord's Prayer. So let's say this as our closing prayer together. Lord, as the man said to Jesus, say me to you, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief. Let us pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Go in peace. Good night. See you next Wednesday. Thank you for coming. And thank all of you who are watching online for watching. Good night.